Alrighty, everybody. I am your host of Cosmic Surfers. I believe it's episode number 48. And I'm Nick Haslam, and we've just had the Epstein files release. I've taken a few days to go through it. And what's been coming up for me is I just happened to be out and about, and felt no real I actually got very burnt. Obviously, I'm like super burnt. Been out on the mower. It's had a sauna. It's hot out there. It's hot in Australia. I just I know that for the masses and for people that haven't studied these kind of topics, it can be confronting or traumatic or a lot. But for anyone that's had a look at any of these topics before, there's no surprises. It's still shocking, of course. I guess I just wanted to stay with it for a few days, and I did watch some different things. I saw Mike Benz on Joe Rogan. He stayed clear of the the darker stuff, and he did talk a lot of other connections. But I saw a few different takes and all that, and what really came up for me was this question of justice, and people talking about justice in terms of arresting the pedophiles. And really, when it comes to this kind of stuff, and the outrage, and what's really going on, the as Mark Passio would say, the two mistakes we can make is not starting and not going all of the way. And in this case, I think not going all of the way is to not talk about government being slavery. I think that's the only true response. And I know that that's in some languages. Some languages is very easy to say that, and in others it might seem like, why are you even talking about that? But the fact remains that getting outraged and going to the police and trying to get arrests, or going to the government, or trying to make arrests happen, and working in the system and all that kind of a thing. This is all of these people. They're all satanic. They're all government at the highest levels, and we saw that with all of these releases. All of these billionaires and all of that. So. It's it is a lot, and when I was because I haven't been on social media, and I was just kind of doing my best to see what came up for me, and what came up for me was putting it out there, and having this kind of message of, well, what are you going to do about it? What, like, this kind of like almost like feeding this hopelessness or powerlessness. It's like, yeah, it's out there, and you've got the releases, you've got the documents, and nothing's going to happen. So now what are you going to do? You can't do anything. We run this world, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, this kind of energy. I could be putting words in, making up narrative or whatever, but to be able to put it all out there, and then to nothing to happen. And I know that there will be some things that will happen, but when it really comes down to it, this is going on all across the world. It's been going on for a long time. We've got a lot of witness testimonies. Holy moly, I did get burnt today. Just had to get done. But yeah, super hot out there. I've got to cover up. I don't want to do that anymore. I'll have to put some stuff on. And today, having a beer. Well deserved, actually. Volta Cerveza with lime. So I don't, my great take on all of his Epstein stuff, and I've been a big fan of Whitney Webb's. As soon as her book was released, I was reading it, ordering it. And I know that others have been onto this for a very long time. The other researchers. There's people know far more about this than me. But I also kind of doing my own thing, and me doing my own thing means that I was disconnected from social media. I wasn't really interested in that over the weekend. It was deliberate that it was done on a Friday afternoon, and and all of that. And I did want to give it time. I have gone through. I did want to shout out, and one of the main things I wanted to talk about today, actually, besides what we're getting into with government slavery as the response, I did want to get into Dark Journalist and Ashton Forbes's takes on this. And straight off the bat, I do want to give some props to Dark Journalist. And he talks about it all this time, and it is a little frustrating when you hear him going on about it all the time, but it is true. He's been doing a lot of work for 10 years or so, over 200 episodes on the X series, and talking about Atlantis, the Atlantis connections with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, going and getting her submarine license and driving those, 2-person submarines, and getting all of these world-leading scientists and geneticists, and mixing bio and technology together. But specifically with Atlantis, this kind of advanced weaponry, kind of 0-point energy, consciousness mixed in with it in the spiritual war and these kind of dark forces. But going down to ancient sites off the west coast of Cuba, and this is what Dark Journalist has documented extensively. And in these Epstein files, this was, some sources came through on that. So I highly recommend you go look at Dark Journalist's most recent video on that. And I think that, as wacky as that might sound to some, and, to some others, it might just be completely normal. But, this spiritual war that we're in, and this kind of, war on consciousness, and this, in the first video that we speak about, I'll have more on this, but this kind of war on reality, and our ability to discern truth and what's really going on. This plays into this advanced technology part, and Jeffrey Epstein was very much a part of that, and that's what Ashton Forbes was talking about. But don't mistake this stuff going on with Atlantis and this ancient technology and these ancient sites as being as important as anything else. And this is what I'm doing here at Cosmic Surface, is helping to document that. That's one of my main interests, and kind of how I got onto this path with natural law. And so, with Epstein's connections with MIT and these advanced scientists and physicists and all of that, breakthrough energy and teleportation and all of that, this kind of time technology and aneugenic fusion with Trump and media is playing more and more of a role. And while there is this salacious and sickening stuff going on, and yes, it's like crucial, and we should all that should all be brought to light. At the same time, this technology and ancient technology and kind of ability to achieve mind control at scale, to bring through these digital control systems with this advanced technology, Epstein was a part of that. And this is what Ashton Forbes was talking about, with his video on it as well. There's a video called Felony Physics. I watched that one too. So I'm I think that's important to ground into some of those areas as well, while there's kind of a lot to this. And of course, I also want to give a shout out to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks as well, of course, because this all comes back to not all of it, but like Pizzagate and these WikiLeaks releases, so the Podesta emails and in that case. So I did want to bring that into it. Because even in geopolitics and currently what's going on, when I was taking a look at Colonel Douglas McGregor, just to kind of get that angle of what's going on, now we've got this nuclear stuff happening again in terms of like nukes and these treaties, or first time in a long time in decades where there's been no safety in place, so they can make as many as they want or whatever. And my first question straight off the bat, and I feel like we should be asking, is like, well, like, if nuclear weapons are obsolete because we've got scalar weaponry, and we can instantly take out stuff because we've got weapons that go beyond time and space, and that is true. So why is there now a move on the back of all of this to talk about nukes again? So I as much as more of these events happen, and again, like, there are plenty of researchers where you can go to where they get into all of the nitty gritty, and there is a lot of and I've got more research to do myself as well, because on satanic ritual abuse, there's a lot there. But this is a spiritual war, and this is why I want to focus on the causal factors as much as possible. And for me, and I'm just going to be as true to myself as I'm putting this out there, I've just got to go with what comes up for me. And what came up for me was this putting it in your face, which can be traumatic, and this kind of like, what are you going to do about it? And then this response, and the only response to be government is slavery, because we do have to go all of the way. And so I'm going to play two videos. And so here is the first one. It's great to be here with you guys, having a beer with you. My name's Nick Haslam. This is Cosmic Surfers, and I'm doing my best to put natural law and objective morality out to the world, and this is what I'm ready to show you today. So,
in the early 1900s, French psychologist Pierre Genet studied what he called disaggregation, the splitting of consciousness under trauma. Genet studied several patients whose traumatic histories had led to what modern science calls multiple personality disorder. Severe trauma in childhood can fragment the mind into different parts, known as alters. The purpose of the alter is to spare the individual the trauma, so the individual consciousness is unaware of the alter. They exist separately. According to history, this has been understood for millennia, and these alters can be programmed and trained, and can hold information inaccessible to the core personality. You can trace this knowledge all the way back to the Egyptian mystery schools, to the Knights Templar, and through all the various secret societies that followed. The neurological research has shown that the alters are different people with different brain activation patterns, autonomic responses, visual acuity, and allergic responses. Some alters speak languages that the individual can't. This explains why these alters were seen as demonic possession in the past, and why many still see it that way. Government studies on combat veterans after World War I showed that extreme stress can produce amnesia and identity disruption. During World War II, Dr. Joseph Mengele experimented with traumatizing children, and beginning in 1945 with Operation Paperclip, the United States began recruiting several scientists involved in this research into the CIA. The CIA's Project Bluebird attempted to create amnesia in people with hypnosis, drugs, and electroshock. This continued with Project Artichoke, where the CIA added sensory deprivation and forced morphine addiction. A 1952 memo shows they were looking to see if a person could be made into an unwitting assassin. In the MK Ultra program, the CIA added a psychological trauma they called psychic driving, often administered while the person was under the influence of LSD. And with Project MK Often, the CIA began experimenting with demonic possession and looking into occult rituals that could influence behavior. According to scores of victims, many of whom have mysteriously died or disappeared, the world stage is cast with psychotic victims of trauma-based mind control, with multiple personalities who do exactly what they are told. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino of the U.S. Army's Psychological Operations, who founded the Satanic Temple of Set in 1975 and managed to get it listed in the U.S. Army Chaplain's Handbook, published a paper in 1980, From PSYOP to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory, that suggested targeting the domestic population with ELF waves and any other type of technology available that could control behavior. There is a trauma-based mind control light version for the entire population, known as effective management and crisis capitalization, strategies of using stress and fear to induce regression and make the population dependent on authority figures or comfort objects. Terror management theory has demonstrated that when subjects were shown imagery of death or disasters, they were more likely to vote for authoritative leaders who promised safety and purchase luxury items they didn't need. A frightened population demands more policing. They tolerate more surveillance, and they prefer to stay indoors. When the population is subjected to mass trauma, they fall into a state of collective dissociation, and unpopular policies are pushed through that would not be accepted by a logical, thinking mental state, like the Patriot Act, or a governmental system run by artificial intelligence. Greg Reese reporting.
Yeah, so there you have it, and I wanted to bring that up because as we've seen with the Omnivore presentation that I went through on this very advanced technology, very smart people are all talking about mind control at scale and digital control grid and all of this. And so when you have a population that goes into fear, as Greg Reese was just saying, you have the ability for them to run towards authoritarian answers. And again, I just wanted to hit home on this justice. And one of the things that I was going to do was to bring up the tarot there's a book by Rachel Pollack, 78 Degrees of Wisdom. And I might do a bit of a reading on that at the end as well, with the Justice card. And I was watching another channel of Evolve Consciousness. Go watch Chris Nelson, KRISNELSON, and he was talking about Mart today from Egypt as well, and the justice scale of over there and morality. And so it's very important when these events are going on that we are tuned in with nurturing and an aspect of true care. And this is not wishy-washy new age, speak or whatever, but having true care in the world and allows us to to create something which is beyond this trauma-based mind control that Reese was just talking about, and these satanic pedo people. And again, when this stuff comes up, it's like, oh, well, what's the solution then? If it's not to get outraged about this stuff going on, which is definitely it's truly sick and something that is worth getting really angry about. But at the same time, this kind of powerlessness. Okay, well, what are we going to do about it? And so it really gets back to first principles. And for first principles, we need to know that government is slavery. And so, this is why I wasn't particularly impressed by people like Mike Benz, because yes, great information, but it's always the same thing. It's like always work within the system and getting Thomas Massey to do this or that, and yes, go do all that. And again, and this is also the issue with Catherine Austin Fitz and Joseph Farrell as well, because yes, they're great, like really big fans of them, share their work and kind of learn a lot. It's great for worldview healing and what's going on. And at the same time, they're stuck in government and religion. And it's like, okay, yes, they might know about the interdimensional warfare and stuff going on like that, but no, religion is not the answer. Neither is government. And it's not to poo-poo anyone, but we have to go all of the way. And to do that, we need to know government slavery. So I'm going to bring on Mike Passio. This is an hour-long watch along. So I don't normally do that well with audios only. So yeah, I'll be in the screen and we can learn it together. It's like a slideshow presentation, but there's no visual of him per se. So.
Victoria, for extending me the invitation to speak at this great event. Thank you to all of the other organizers for the great job they've done in putting together the event this weekend. Just so I get an idea for myself, how many people would say that they're somewhat or very familiar with my work by a show of hands? How many people would say that they're new, entirely new, or somewhat new? Okay, great. Thank you. So today, I'm probably going to be considered to be one of the more extreme speakers here today, someone with more radical ideas to present. My presentation here today is entitled, Government is Slavery. And this is true, and I'm going to explain why it's true, and I'm going to explain the solution to this condition. Trying to advance. It's not advancing. So I'll call for the advance. There you go. So that's the title. Next slide. I start my presentations off with some basic caveats or warnings, if you will. You're not going to be seeing anything brand new here today. This knowledge has been around since time immemorial. A lot of people say, well, I've heard things like this before that you present. And yes, that's no surprise. You're not going to be seeing anything brand new here. As the old saying goes, there is nothing new under the sun. This saying means that truth is objective and eternal. It has always been with us. It always will be with us. It's whether we actually recognize it or not and put it into practice in our lives. All that I can do as a presenter is present the truth in a personalized framework with my own particular style and aesthetics applied to the presentation. Next slide, please. That being said, I don't sugarcoat my words or my delivery. And this presentation is for psychologically mature adults who are ready to hear hard truths spoken. So this is not for people who appear to be adults bodily, but are actually have the psychological mentation of a child who attempts to think and reason with their emotions. If you're that type of an emotional person, this information is probably going to be very difficult for you to hear, but guess what? That's okay. It's still true anyway. Next slide, please. So my presentation style is very direct. It's often very intense. Some people even describe it as combative, and that's okay. I don't sugarcoat my words or my delivery. Some people are very likely to become upset or angered by what I will say during this presentation, so be it. My background in the presentation. Right is right even if everyone is against it. Wrong is wrong even if everybody is for it. So that's my personal motivation. Next slide, please. This is my website, whatonearthishappening.com. That's my logo. And next slide. I consider myself an abolitionist. I am for the eradication of human slavery. So I call myself different things. I'm an aggregator of information and ancient knowledge. I am a studier of the occult, which is my background. I consider myself a de-occultist. I am taking hidden knowledge from time immemorial in human civilization, and I am trying to take it out of hiding and explode it onto the world so that other people can make informed decisions with that information. But most of all, I consider myself an abolitionist. I stand against all forms of slavery. That's physical, that's spiritual, that's covert, and overt forms of slavery. I think slavery is the abomination of all abominations. It is the most horrible crime that could ever be committed against any being. And I stand against that in all of its forms. And you should be an abolitionist too if you consider yourself a good and moral person. Next slide, please. So I'm going to present this presentation in 3 parts. Part one is the problem, or what I call the truth regarding the human condition. Part two is going to be why the problem persists. And part three is going to be the actual solution to solving the problem of human slavery. Next slide, please. So there is a truth regarding the human condition. The human condition is slavery. Now, how many people find that shocking to hear by a show of hands? No one. People generally have an idea that something is incredibly wrong in our world. And this is what it is. There is violence, there is coercion, there is duress, and putting all of those things together, that equals slavery in a particular form. The form that it exists in right now, currently, is not what I call ball, chain, and shackle slavery. It is not chattel slavery. Chattel slavery, unfortunately, is still practiced in some areas of the world, obviously has been practiced in our past. Huge abomination, unbelievably immoral, should never, ever be tolerated. This is not the current form that slavery is taking to a large extent in our world. Next slide, please. This is the form that it is taking. The human condition is covert slavery, not overt ball, chain, and chattel slavery. It is a form of covert or hidden slavery that works through the mind. We are conditioned to believe false axiomatic premises and belief systems that then become an enslavement process. And that is where we find ourselves right now, in a prison of the mind, which is the worst form of slavery in many ways because it is the most difficult to see and it is the most difficult to conquer. But that is the human condition. Next slide, please. The form of slavery that we are experiencing is called government. Government is a covert form of slavery built upon a false axiom. An axiom is a fundamental belief system that is held very, very, very deeply in the mind. It is rooted. It has deep roots in the mind. It has deep roots in the emotions and in the psyche of people who believe in this belief system. The belief system or axiomatic premise that all forms of government throughout all of human history is based upon is the belief in authority. Government is authority. It is not suggestion. It is telling people that you must comply, you must obey. You must turn over whatever resources we tell you you must turn over. You must cease and desist in enacting rights if we tell you you may not enact them. And we saw this all through the COVID nonsense, that we all just went through. The very idea of human authority is an illusion. It's an illusion and a delusion. For one to believe in it, they must be delusional and willing to believe in that which is not real. Authority is a claim and a false one at that. It is an illusion of a diseased psyche. It is a form of mental illness, the belief in authority. It is based entirely in violence. That's the only thing that backs up the claim of authority is violence. And it is built upon the erroneous, dogmatic, religious belief. Authority is a false religion. Make no mistake about it. And the religious belief is that some people are masters who have the moral right to issue commands, while other people are their slaves who have a moral obligation to obey their master's commands. These are called, of course, laws. The concept of authority is actually the most dangerous religion that has ever existed upon the face of the earth. And it has temples, rituals, symbols, just like any other cultural religion. This is a new covert religion. People don't think of it as religion, yet that's exactly what authority and government are. They are diseased religious belief systems that must be purged from the mind as the mental, psychological, and spiritual viruses that they actually are. Next slide, please. My question, see, we could analyze this in a myriad of different forms, right? We could look at taxation, the confiscation by force, by duress of the fruit of the labor of another. You know, and people have analyzed that. Well, what percentage of it is not slavery? If 100% confiscation of human labor is slavery, can we reduce it to 95 and it no longer be slavery? Can we reduce it to 50% and it's not slavery anymore magically? No, only 0 would not be slavery anymore. Okay? We can analyze it from a perspective of, prohibition against substances you can put in your body. Well, if you don't have bodily autonomy to put into it what you wish or to not have put into it what you don't want in it, then your body belongs to another. This should be simple common sense. Unfortunately, most people don't see it that way. And those who don't are incorrect. We can look at licensure and a host of other things. But common sense really dictates that we only ask one true question. Has the very concept of authority ever been a moral concept? Has it ever been actually backed or based in morality? Okay, so next slide, please. This is the old variant of authority. Okay, you have a hierarchical and compartmentalized structure with a king at the top. Next slide, please, or build. This was called, in the ancient world, kingship or royalty. It is authority vested in one being that considers themselves the sovereign, the ruler, the master. This was called the Old World Order because the Old World Order was ruled by this form of authority. It was overt. Everybody knew who the king was. Everybody knew that if you crossed the king's demands or laws or wishes, the henchmen of the king came after you and killed you or did brutal violence unto you. So this is the Old World Order. Eventually, people tired of living under kings and queens and experiencing their violence directly and overtly. Next build, please. So this is the new form of authority. It's the same structure, except at the top, instead of one being, there's an oligarchical few. So nothing has changed. The only thing that is different is that the quote unquote authority has been divested into a few beings instead of vested in one. Next build. This is called government, of course. This is authority vested in few, or an oligarchy, a few rulers. This is the New World Order. But you see, the new religion is exactly the same as the old religion. Nothing has changed except the name, and it has been euphemized to appear as something different when in fact it is the same form of violence. This has never been moral. This has always been based in violence, coercion, and duress, and has always been an immoral structure to believe in, to participate in, to enact. Anybody that has taken part in that structure willfully is an immoral being. They are a bad person. It doesn't matter whether they're participating in overt slavery and control or covert slavery and control. You cannot be moral while believing in that system. It is an impossibility in nature, regardless of what one thinks in their own mind or how they justify those belief systems. Next slide, please. You can call that system whatever you want, but I call it what it really is, and I don't sugarcoat it. It's slavery. It's always been slavery. It's slavery now. It will always continue to be slavery regardless of what anyone thinks of it. If they don't recognize it as slavery, they are wrong. That is the eternal truth of the matter. Next slide. Today, we have some people that have made the recognition that this is our current condition. Again, that's why this part one is called the current human condition, the problem. So let's analyze the problem like this. Here's a person who realizes that the problem exists and they realize they got to get from here to there. And the top of that peak on the mountain, next build please, is true human freedom. Or in other words, the abolition of slavery, of government. Next build please. This person represents someone who says they want freedom. And I make the delineation between somebody who's an actual freedom advocate and doing the things that are required to get to freedom versus someone who pays lip service to freedom, who says they want it but isn't actually doing the things to achieve it. In between the person who says they want slavery, representing the so-called freedom movement in our world today, and the actual peak, the goal, true human freedom, next build please, there are requirements for achieving the goal. And I am here to tell people the unfortunate reality, the truth of the matter, that the so-called freedom movement, the people who say they want human freedom, have not made any true, accurate advances through the requirements for attaining that goal toward the goal. At least in the last 16 years that I've been doing this work, and I've been well aware of what's going on in the world for longer than that, from an insider perspective, not from book knowledge. I work with some of the people who are the eugenicists of this world. I work with some of the people who are the real covert controllers of our world. At a low level, admittedly, not a very high level. But my background showed me a glimpse into the corridors of real power that sit enthroned behind ostensible power. And it was enough to scare the living shit out of me and wake me up and get me to start blowing the whistle on all of it. Because the depth of evil that I even saw is nowhere compared to where it goes, and most people have zero clue, not even a small bit. In all the time I've been doing this work, I feel like we've actually gone backwards. More people may be aware of the problem, slightly more, but so few people really understand the requirements for attaining the goal that it's pitifully sad. Pitifully. They have not correctly analyzed the problem. They have not correctly identified what the solution to the problem is. And they're scattered in a million ways to the four winds of the earth about how they think this problem should be solved. But they don't really have the master key in hand. Next slide. This is a little bit of light humor that I bring in. This is the modern freedom movement, unfortunately. Yeah, it's dark humor, but I throw a little bit of it in. I call this guy Chumpy the hamster because, the freedom movement is chumped, to put it in street lingo. Okay? They're going around like that proverbial hamster on a wheel, and there is no movement. It's lip service to movement. But they haven't made any actual measurable progress toward the goal. And I'm not here to pat people on the back and say everybody's doing such a great job. I'm here to tell you the hard truth about what's going to have to be done. Because I fully do understand the dynamics of what will lead to that mountain peak. And most people have zero clue what it involves. I want to get this guy off the wheel and get him moving to the goal and up the mountain peak. Well, we got a long, 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 long way to go to get there. Next slide, please. Part 2, why does the problem of human slavery persist? So the truth regarding human nature. So we have to delineate between a condition versus what actual nature is, right? Human nature is not that we are either good or evil. We can be worked into those conditions, and that happens through information that we take in, that we believe, that we use to make all of our decision-making processes, and then what we act upon in the world through our behaviors. The human condition has been worked into a state of slavery because of what actual human nature is, and it's not what most people think that it is. We'll be talking about that momentarily. Next slide, please. I'm going to start this section with a quote about perception management and social engineering. These are just fancy terms for mind control. The people who really run our society do not do it through direct physical violence. They do it through making people believe, through repetition and media, that they must continue to support their own system of slavery through their behaviors in the world. And you can call that anything you want to call it, but I'm going to call it what it really is: mind control. And I worked with the actual social engineers and mind controllers of our world, once again, admittedly, at a very low level. But I saw what they did and how they operate and how tight-knit they are and how of one will they are. They're together like this. And what they say they're going to do, they do it, and they do it effectively and efficiently because their intellect is unimaginably superior to just about most people on this planet, unfortunately. They are the most highly intellectual. That doesn't mean that they're invulnerable or perfect or invincible. But they know everything about how human motivations, the human psyche, the human psychology works, and they can manipulate it at their whim. This quote is from Buckminster Fuller. He said, "The Dark Ages still reign over all humanity, and the depth and persistence of this domination are only now becoming clear. This Dark Ages prison has no steel bars, chains, or locks. Instead, it is locked by misorientation and built of misinformation. Caught up in a plethora of conditioned reflexes and driven by the human ego, both warder and prison attempt meagerly to compete with God. All are intractably skeptical of what they do not understand. We are powerfully imprisoned in these dark ages simply by the terms in which we have been conditioned to think. The mind precedes all manifestation. This is the first occult law, the law of mentalism. The mind is all, and everything flows from the mind. Most people do not understand this. The change must occur in the mind. If the change does not occur in the mind and in consciousness, physical manifestation of anything different is impossible, according to law. In the cosmos, not man's law, nature's law. That's where the change is not truly occurring. We believe that we can vote our way out of this, create some new currency, create some new system, reform an existing system, and I'm here to tell you it doesn't work that way. The change has to happen here. It has to flow to here, ultimately, or some would say it has to start with the heart, with care. And then the mind can then create the manifested change in the real world. Next slide, please. This is the part people are going to have a hard time with. Our world is ruled by the occult. It's not what you believe it to be. Part of it may be, but we have to understand what occultism is at its foundational aspects. It's hidden knowledge. It's hidden knowledge about how the human psyche works. It's hidden knowledge about how the real laws of nature work. The word occult is derived from the Latin occultus, meaning hidden. And that in turn, that adjective is in turn derived from the noun oculus, meaning eye, where the word ocular comes from. Occultism is the study of the hidden laws of nature, specifically those laws which are at work in the invisible, mental, and spiritual domain, far more than those that are at work in the visible or physical world. Therefore, occultism involves the acceptance of a much wider worldview than that which is ordinarily taken by the everyday person. Occultists, then, may be defined as those who study all the laws of nature, both those that are readily seen with the eyes and those which are much more difficult to see with the physical eyes or measuring instruments alone. And this is what the rulers of our world count upon, that our worldview will not be expanded to such an extent, and we will stay in a limited modality of awareness, such that we cannot see the laws that are operating in the non-physical realm, the realm of mentality and the realm of causation that underlie manifestation. They're counting that we'll remain ignorant of those laws. Next slide, please. And that brand of occultism I refer to in my work as dark occultism, because the occult is just information. It is just knowledge of how things really work. So as Derek eloquently said in his presentation, a hammer is just a tool. You can build a house with it or you can crush skulls with it. The occult is just information. It's a tool to an end. If you use it for the uplift of consciousness, it's a very positive tool. If you use it for manipulation, control, and ultimately enslavement, it's an extremely negative set of tools. The wielder of the information is the one that sets the precedent for whether it's going to be used for good or evil.
Cosmic shamanism, baby.
Okay? So I talk about the people who are taking this knowledge, holding it very tight to their chest, and using it for deception, mind control, and ultimately control of other people through it by controlling the ignorant and deceiving the ignorant and manipulating the ignorant. I call them in my work dark occultists. At its ideological core, dark occultism postulates that knowledge of the human psyche and knowledge of the laws of the universe should be hidden, should be occulted, and held only by a few human beings, the self-proclaimed masters of the world. It is much more accurate. This is one of the hardest things I've ever done, is try to explain to people what the occult really is, what Satanism really is, what Luciferianism really is. They don't want to accept it because of their religious backgrounds, modalities, ways of thinking that come out of organized religion and cultural religious belief systems. I've been in...
Very relevant right now with bringing this up at the Epstein document release.
The occult directly. How many people have ever been in an occult order or secret society? Personally. I'm the only one in the room. Okay? So I was a priest within the Church of Satan in my past. I was appointed by the high priest and founder of the Church of Satan in San Francisco, Anton LaVey, before he passed away in 1997. I'm not proud of that. You know, I was roped into a cult, essentially. But you know what that did? That gave me deep insider knowledge of how cults work. And boy, did I learn how they work.
I want to say something on this as well, because some people might, I know it's a, it is, this person, Mark Passio, does have experiential wisdom with dark occult. And on one hand, obviously like a less educated or less kind of thinking person might think something like, oh, well, that's a bad thing. But to be able to speak from direct knowledge and direct wisdom of what's really going on and to share it, to come out of the other side of it, to change one's thoughts and emotions and actions and whole constitution and kind of learning, what's really going on, to come out and to kind of, with true moral principles and to share that, that's something that, that experiential, nature of that sharing is really, really key here. And that's something that that I resonate with.
And one of the hardest things is explaining to people Satanism isn't the worship of the Christian devil. It's a mindset of pure ideological selfishness. It's a way of acting in the world. It's a worldview. It's a way of seeing yourself and your relationship to the world and other people. And it's extremely sick, twisted, and psychopathic. And this presentation isn't all about Satanism. I have whole presentations on that topic from a firsthand insider's perspective, from a clergy member's perspective, quite frankly. But what I'm trying to do is just give you the base idea that what occultists really are, if we really want to think about this in the true way that it should be seen, is dark occultists should be seen as ancient, advanced psychologists. These are the social engineers that are really running our world through mind control. We should see them as advanced psychologists who hold and wield the hidden information about how the human psyche works and how the laws of nature that have thus been henceforward occulted from us, hidden from us. They hide that information and wield it in ways which create for them a power differential over the ignorant. Knowledge is not power by itself. Knowledge is a means to power. It has to be applied through action to become converted into kinetic power. And they do that by exploiting that knowledge differential over the ignorant, the masses of humanity. Next slide, please. And here's one of the main things that they know and the average person doesn't know. What is the reality of human nature? Again, this is why the problem persists. That's the section we're in. Part 2, why does the problem of human slavery persist? And one of the hidden pieces of information that needs to be understood is what human nature actually is. One of the other most difficult pieces of information to teach, because so many people have completely conditioned reflexive responses about what they already believe human nature to be. And our owners and masters know this information on this slide is absolutely true. The human condition is programmability. It is not good, it is not evil. It can become either good or evil depending on how the information is taken into the being, processed over time, forms into a belief system, and then informs our actions. And they know this. We are not computers, but human nature behaves similarly to a computer. And then those who know it can fully take advantage of that fact, and they can manipulate those who are ignorant of that fact. This is where it all starts. The foundation is what information we take in to ourselves. And then we base our decision-making processes upon that information, and we ultimately base our behavior upon it. So human beings are programmable. We are a programmable species. Who's doing the programming is the main question. Those social engineers I talked about are the ones doing the programming. Much like computers, if a human being has a bad hard drive format, these are the conditions during a child's formative years. The word format is right in formative, right? Just pronounced differently. So people think it's somehow different. No, that's the drive format that gets laid down on the drive, right? If it has a bad, you could call that the file system, right? How much trauma is in people's childhood laying down a bad format? If it has a bad operating system, which is the thing that's operating all around us, our culture, cultural belief systems, ways that we interface and operate with each other based on existing belief systems, structures, religions, institutions, schooling, etc. If that's bad, our operating system all around us, our culture, and if we have badly installed software programs, how does a computer behave if there's bad bugs in the software? It doesn't put out what you want it to put out. It puts something out completely junk. Okay, so if we have bad software programs, these are erroneous, rigid, and dogmatic belief systems, like the belief in authority. The output, if all of those inputs are bad, the output on the screen, and the output is our behavior, and the screen is our shared experience, what we call life on planet Earth, is also going to be bad. And it will contribute, all of those things will contribute to deteriorating conditions on a mass scale. Like a computer, the behavior of a human being will largely depend upon its programming, or the quality of the information that is put into it, which enables it to process and create efficiently and effectively. In programming language, they have a term called garbage in, garbage out. If garbage goes in, garbage comes out the other side. If quality goes in through effective programming, quality comes out the other side, and you get the response on the screen, on the website, on the printer that you want to see. Human life works very similarly to this. And the problem is that is occult knowledge. I'm giving you knowledge the secret society members hold, and they don't want this understood. You know, it may seem simple and it may not seem like deeply hidden occult information, but believe me, this is what they don't want people understanding. Next slide, please. And even more than that, here's the main thing that they don't want you to understand. This is the secret of every secret society that has ever existed in all of human history.
That's hilarious. I did not know that this was coming up, this Justice card, because I'm about to do a reading after this, on this card from that book I mentioned.
This is it. This is the secret of secrets. You know, the whole thing with the secret, the law of attraction, that's not the secret. This is the real law of attraction. Okay? Natural law is a set of universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable conditions which govern the consequences of behaviors of beings with the capacity for understanding the difference between harmful and non-harmful behavior. Now that's a mouthful, but if you analyze each one of those things in turn, it means these are not made by human beings. It exists everywhere in the entire manifested universe. It can never be changed or altered or escaped from. That's what a law actually is. It's a condition that is in place and you cannot escape its consequence. When we act in the world, if our behavior is of such a particular quality, we get a particular result. If we change the quality of that behavior, we get a different result. The universe in this way acts as a mirror. For what we put out, we receive back. Some people have called this karma. It doesn't work like people think karma works, like they teach it in the cartoon world, where you steal money from somebody, you walk out the door and a safe falls on your head. Karma is aggregate. It operates over an entire civilization, over long swaths of time. So there is often a disconnect between cause and effect. A slide that I used to use to describe this is a person sitting with big dominoes, and he pushes one, and then it goes all the way around in a big circle behind him, and then eventually one's going to slam him on this side. That's how karma really works, over time, where you create a cause, but you cannot see the effect coming back around. This is how natural law operates. The understanding of natural law is centered upon bringing our own conscience, which is the knowledge of the difference between right and wrong. Conscience is not action. It's knowledge. It's not emotion. The word conscience literally is derived from Latin, con meaning together or with, and sciere, where our word science comes from, meaning to know or to understand. So you put them together, common knowledge. Common sense. That's what conscience is. It's knowledge that we should all have and all share together. Unfortunately, we don't have common sense as a civilization, as a species. The understanding of natural law is centered upon bringing our own conscience into alignment with objective morality. Morality is objective. It is a set of standards that actually define inherently in nature the quantitative and qualitative difference between right and wrong behavior. And this is the problem. Most people don't have that knowledge. They don't actually know the difference between right and wrong. And I'm actually going to prove that with some data. This means definitively knowing which behaviors are rights because they do not cause harm to other sentient beings, and which behaviors are wrongdoings because they do initiate harm to other sentient beings. That's what is required to be free. Freedom is hinged upon objective morality and whether the beings in any given civilization know definitively the actual objective difference between right and wrong. And I am here today to tell you that the bulk, the lion's share of humanity does not actually know the difference between right and wrong. And that's why we're enslaved. Next slide. Natural law is about knowing our rights, not thinking, not believing, not feeling. It's about actual knowledge of what behaviors are rights, what behaviors are wrongs. There is a correct definition for what a human right is. A right is an action that does not initiate harm to another sentient being. That is the correct definition of what a right is. A behavior that does not initiate harm to another sentient being. Notice I defined it in the negative. So in order to know what rights are, you have to know what rights are not. You have to know the actual behaviors that do initiate harm or violence against other sentient beings. You can only truly define a right in the negative. This is called apophatic inquiry. It's defining what something is by defining what it is not. You cannot define.
This is one of the things that I love about this work and that I really learned was describing things in the apophatic is a really powerful way to say what it is by eliminating what it is not. And similar to the meditation, conversation I had the other day with the Tibetan practitioner, Tibetan Bon practitioner, the indigenous meditation or shamanic meditation. Yes, indigenous too. And so, that's what I wanted to say.
A right in the affirmative. It must be defined in the negative. It is not the behaviors that initiate harm. I did a social experiment just before the pandemic hit in late 2019 when I was doing research for my documentary film called Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law. We did pretty extensive interviewing all around the city of Philadelphia. And we asked many people, could you please define for us a human right? And they gave us all kinds of huge spectrum of answers. And the main thing people thought rights were food, shelter, clothing. They believe rights are resources instead of actions. This is the type of skewed mentality and skewed social engineering that is done to human beings, where we believe the right to access something means that that thing is the right, right? I may have the right to access food, right? But that doesn't mean food is the right. The action of accessing it is the right, as long as I don't initiate harm upon others by doing that, you see. And that's what we went and asked people. Could you actually give us the core definition, the actual definition of what a human right is? And we asked a few hundred people. 0 people gave the correct answer. Now, I ask people this. If someone cannot define what something is, how can you possibly be aware of it? Let alone, how could you possibly keep it? You can't even define it correctly. You don't think somebody's just going to come along, snatch that away? Give me that. You don't know what that is anyway. You can't even define it. And we think we're going to keep something that we can't even properly define? Good luck. Next slide. See, this is skewed in the mind because of traditional religious belief systems. And I'm not here to purely attack religion. I'll attack them all equally, right? I think each has a core of truth within it that gets distorted. It gets blotted out by dogmatic belief and ritual and control and, wanting people to come in and give the religion resources and obey its dictates and decrees, just like government. Traditionally, in the Christian tradition defined the 7 deadly sins, and here's what they are. Next build. Religion would have us believe that these vices are sins: pride, gluttony, sloth, lust, anger, jealousy, greed. Now, just dwelling in these things is not a great idea. I'm not going to say just go and do these endlessly and expect not to be debased, right? Because these can lead to immoral behaviors at some point, but in and of themselves, they are not behaviors that directly violate the rights of other beings. These are not violent behaviors against others. Again, if you dwell in these modalities of consciousness, could they lead to you doing things like that? Sure, at some point. But if I indulge in too much food, that is not violating the rights of another, even though it may be gluttonous, right? Look at the qualitative difference in the real sins, the real natural law transgressions. Now, let's look at the actual qualitative difference. Next build. The transgressions against creation's law are all forms of theft. And here's what they are: murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and deception. Every one of these behaviors is a violation of natural rights of another being. Every one of these behaviors is a form of theft, stealing something that one does not have the right to take from another. Murder, the stealing of life, you don't have the right to take. Assault, the theft of personal well-being, bodily well-being and bodily autonomy that you don't have the right to take. Rape, the theft of sexual free will association that one does not have the right to rob from another. Theft, the stealing of physical property. Trespass, the stealing of safety in one's living domain. Coercion, the taking of someone else's free will choice and ability to make informed decisions. And deception, taking of someone's right to make informed decisions through the reception of information and truth. Every form of true wrongdoing is theft. Therefore, natural law boils down to one sentence: don't steal. The current condition of human slavery is proof that the people of this planet have not learned correctly what their property is and what their property is not. We are stealing in every conceivable way, and we don't understand what we truly own and what we truly do not own. All rights are property rights. All violations of rights are theft. Next slide, please. The natural law of freedom goes like this: freedom and morality are directly proportional and can never be separated from each other. And again, true morality and freedom are directly proportional. Not religious belief systems of morality. The real transgressions against natural law that define what rights are not. And then everything else is reserved as a human right. Actions that do not initiate harm against other sentient beings. As aggregate morality increases, aggregate freedom increases. As aggregate morality declines, aggregate freedom declines. I apologize, this was written in black text and it didn't come out quite as bright as I wanted it to, but this is a mathematical formula that actually defines human freedom. I'm actually going to write a scientific paper on it and submit it to a peer-reviewed journal. I'm working on that. I'm going to actually include the equation and explain it, but this means the sum of freedom is directly proportional to the sum of moral behavior as that behavior goes from 0 to infinity. Very simple summation equation in mathematics, okay, for the left-brained among us. Right, or the scientifically inclined. This is a science. This is not a religion. This is not a belief system. This is a science of how we receive freedom or we receive enslavement. That's the master key to everything. This is what the occult world does not want known. This is the inner core of the secret of every secret society that has ever existed, and you've just been given it. And you could take that or leave it, you could believe that or not, but that is the actual fact of the matter. Next slide. Part 3. I'm going to wrap up in this section. The only solution to slavery. And people will say, no, there's a lot. I would say there's one primary solution to slavery. There are ancillary things that can be done in support of this solution, but they themselves, in and of themselves, are not the actual solution. They are supportive measures to the solution. This is the actual requirement for human freedom. Let's open this section up. Number 1, we must stop putting the cart before the horse. What this means is that most people who say that they want freedom incorrectly believe that the solution to defeating slavery and creating freedom lies in creating something new. As again, I started the whole presentation, there's nothing new under the sun. The solution is not to create something new. The solution is to stop being complicit with evil, to stop doing things that are not moral for a reward, to stop being complicit with anything the control system tells us we must do. The solution lies in taking all of our power back, and that is done through one word, and this is known in the occult tradition of Freemasonry, which I have extensively studied, as the lost word. Maybe you've heard of the lost word, but most people on this planet do not know what it is. The lost word is a simple word. It's not some symbol, it's not a book, it's not some statue buried in Alexandria, Egypt, okay? The lost word is no. And most people will not say it to evil. And that is why the condition of slavery persists. People believe we need to create something new, such as new systems of organization, new currencies, new technology, etc., on and on and on. New food growing techniques. These things are wonderful. I'm not here to put them down and say, don't do any of that ever. But they're not the solution in and of themselves. These things will always be doomed to fail if we put them first, because something else has to be put first, namely truth. Next slide. And sorry to burst people's bubbles, but while I support and believe in these things and think that they should be worked toward, they're not the solution long term. Because all of the immoral people who believe in and support government and their agents, their henchmen, their violent thugs, will just come in and eradicate this stuff. They will not allow it to exist as long as the belief in authority exists. You have to eradicate the belief in authority, which is the belief in slavery. You have to be an abolitionist and get other people to become abolitionists first, because that is deeply understanding moral principles. And that's what has to be put first. Next slide. You have to put the first things first, and I mean literally. Principles, the word principle is derived etymologically from the noun principia in Latin, which means first thing, chief among other things, the most important thing. Principles are first things. They must be learned and made common sense. That's what conscience is. You have to do that first. You can't make that some ancillary thing. Principles have to come first before anything else, before any other form of manifestation will ever be able to succeed. And we're not doing this. Very few people are involved in accomplishing putting principles first through moral education. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Next slide. We have to understand that anarchy is the only moral philosophical position to take. No political position is moral. There is no such thing as a moral political position. Only the absence of rulership is the moral position. And again, believe whatever you want, what I said is still true. That is a fact of the matter in nature. The word anarchy is, see, we've been told anarchy is chaos because that's how social engineering works. That's how mind control works. You repeat something and repeat it.
I'll put my hand up. I was wrong. I even very far along my journey, I was still like, oh, anarchy, like those people, and I was wrong. So this is about to explain why.
You could keep repeating the incorrect definition to the slave class. Keep telling them black is white, up is down, good is evil, day is night, light is dark, and eventually they'll believe it because they've heard it so many goddamn times. You know, that's how mind control works. Repetition is the greatest form of mind control in any media. The word anarchy really is etymologically derived from the Greek language in two root parts. An, a or an in Greek, and I studied classical Greek. I attended a Jesuit preparatory high school and studied classical Greek for years. And, you know, I learned my Latin and Greek really well because I understood very early on, upon being taught it in my high school years, that almost all the words we speak on a daily basis, at least 70% of them are derived from Latin and Greek, from ancient Latin and ancient Greek. So it behooves us to really study ancient languages like that from where our language is derived. So I bring up etymology a lot in my work. Anarchy is derived from the Greek prefix an, meaning without or the absence of, and the Greek noun archos, archon, which means master or ruler over another being. It does not mean master in the connotation that it's a very learned person who has really mastered their art. No, it means I own you. That form of master. That's what archon means in Greek. The master of a slave. Okay? Anarchy does not mean without rules. There are always going to be rules because there's always going to be natural law. It's inherent to the universe. It's inherent to creation. Anarchy literally means without rulers and without masters. So if you did a word association game with people and you said, first word that comes to your mind, without rulers, without a master, people are going to say, that's a free person. A free being doesn't have rulers. A free being doesn't have masters. But you then say, give me the word association, anarchy. They'll say chaos, lawlessness. You know, imagine. That's the occult world. They can convince people that the very definition of a word is the exact opposite of its true meaning. No rulers and no masters equals true freedom. Next slide, please. You can call it whatever you want. If you're not comfortable with the word anarchist, if you're not comfortable with even the word voluntarist, and you don't want to explain that one, I go with the term abolitionist. I'm an abolitionist, and it's the only moral position that there is. There is no other moral position except the abolition of authority and government, because they are all built upon violence, coercion, and duress, and that is ultimately slavery. Next slide. The only solution is a spiritual solution. There will never be a political solution to this problem.
This has come up in the 0-point energy and breakthrough energy and scalar weaponry side of things, and like remote viewing, and then it's it's just there's no way around this. This is key.
There will never be a financial solution to this problem. There will never even be a technological solution to this problem. I'm an advocate for technology. I know how to use technology. It's what I used to do for a living. I was an IT guy. I was damn good at my job. I know my way around computers pretty damn well. But that's not going to be the solution. There's a technological component to the solution, which I'm going to touch on in a moment. There is no political, financial, or technological solution to human slavery. We must become truly enlightened regarding objective morality and natural law first, put those principles first, advocate for the only moral position, which is abolition of government, and then teach that to others publicly to make it common sense all around the world. Next slide, please. Enacting the solution I refer to as doing the one great work. This is the magnum opus of the occult, or the great work. The great work is setting aside our selfish intentions for ourselves and doing the work of moral education for others once we have learned it, once we have learned true morality. Now, let me ask this question by a show of hands. How many people themselves, you as an individual, your primary work and goal, your primary effort in life is the moral education of the populace? A few people in the room, but guess what? That would amount to a tiny handful. And guess what? If we did this in a wider, selection of people, that percentage would even go down much further. We're in a very enlightened space here. We're in a very enlightened room here together compared to the general population. Make no mistake of that, okay? Think about how small that percentage is even amongst our ranks. That's not good enough. That's nowhere near good enough. I'm not trying to put people down by saying that. I'm being honest with you about where our work needs to be. We want to build parallel systems, great. Give 20% to that effort, right? You don't want to put all the eggs in one basket. Put 80% of the eggs in the basket of proper moral education, especially of the youth. Put 20% in ancillary things, parallel systems, etc. No, there's nothing bad, inherently bad in those things. So I just want to reemphasize that. But if we don't make it at least an 80-20 split toward moral education and principles, we cannot win. It's impossibility according to law. The one great work of ending slavery can never be accomplished unless and until the knowledge of objective morality and natural law is learned first and then published and communicated in the modern technological age with the tools that we have at our disposal in the forms of all different forms of media, widely and freely over the medium that we call the internet, for all to learn. This is the human birthright, this knowledge. It is not for the few. It is for all. It is for every human being to learn and take that knowledge into oneself and then propagate it to other people. And that is what our one great work to do if we want to truly fulfill the requirements to become a free people. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention. You could advance to the final slide.
Thank you, Mark, for that presentation. And yes, that is why I'm doing this right now. So, as you can see with these Epstein releases, that's why I wanted to show you this, because until we understand and comprehend that belief in this authority is not getting us anywhere, then and the learning and teaching moral principles, then we won't have these solutions that gets us out of this mess. So the last thing I wanted to do, if I can figure it out, it's a bit itchy. Yeah. Let me just see. Wanted to just read a choose a file size more than 50 megabytes and it's 60. All right, just give me a second here. I should be able to. Image file. Just bear with me, folks. All right, well, I'll just read it. Hang on a minute. I will see if that works. And yeah, I think I might have just figured this out, guys. So what I want to do is I want to read to you about justice. It just came up, the justice card. And okay, I'm almost almost there. It's taken me a little while to get there. I will share the screen with you now by doing share this tab, and then doing this, and then doing this. I'll get there in a second. So it wasn't a turning inwards one. Wow, I thought I had to sort it out. It was definitely in turning inwards. Okay, justice. Now, increase size. How do I do? What are you guys seeing? It's very small on your side. Oh, this will just have to do for now. Justice. This is the card here in turning inward section of this is Rachel Pollack, 78 degrees of wisdom. Thanks for sticking with me. The image of this trump derives from the Greek Titaness Themis, who appears with her blindfold and scales on courthouse frescoes throughout the Western world. The legal Justitia, to give her her Latin name, was blindfolded to demonstrate that the law does not discriminate and applies to weak and powerful alike. The principle of social justice, however, properly belongs to the emperor, directly above the justice. Card 11 indicates that the psychic laws of justice by which we advance according to our ability to understand the past depend on seeing the truth about ourselves and about life. The Tarot Justitia, therefore, wears no blindfold. So far, we have spoken of the second line as a process of withdrawal from outer concerns to awaken the inner vision of ourselves and of life. But a vision of the underlying nature of things is meaningless if it does not produce an active response. We must always act, the magician principle, on the wisdom received from the inner self, the high priestess principle. Not just the perfectly balanced scales, but all the images on the card to point to an equilibrium between understanding and action. So it's about moral action, not just knowing. The figure, a woman, appears androgynous, though she fits firmly on her stone bench she looks poised to stand. One foot points outward from her robe, the other remains hidden. The sword, an emblem of action, universe. Is that the right page? It seems like it's on the wrong page. Just give me a second here. Is it? Oh, okay. I'm going the wrong way. That makes sense. The sword, an emblem of action, symbolize the four basic elements of the ancient and medieval science. From the right-hand corner, anti-clockwise are fire, water, air, and earth, and these elements belong to belong as well to wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. Besides representing the elements, the 4 beasts also stand for the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac: Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus. That's me. The zodiac, of course, is the great wheel of the visible universe. Thus both the elements and the signs signify the physical world, again seen as a mystery and which can only be truly understood by learning the secret truths. The other connection with the 4 elements comes in the 4-letter name of God on the wheel's rim. Hang on. I'm on the wrong page. Sorry, guys. I don't know how that happened. Why is it going from page 83? That's 80. That's 82. 85. Okay, this is strange because I opened up in the browser. Okay, so I was on 83, which was the sword, an emblem of action, points straight upward, indicating both resolve and the idea that wisdom is like a sword piercing through the illusion of events to find the inner meaning. To edge, the sword signifies choice. Life requires us to make decisions, and at the same time, each decision, once made, cannot be revoked. It becomes part of us. We are formed by the actions we have taken in the past. We form our future selves by the actions we take now. The scales also represent the perfect balance of past and future. Past and future balance, not in time, but in the clear sight of justice, staring out at you from the exact center of the major arcana. Throughout the first half of the major arcana, when a person involves himself in the outer world, he suffers from the illusion that he's living life on an active principle. This is because we confuse doing things with action. As we turn inward, we assume we turn away from action. And indeed, the process of line 2 cannot be accomplished without a pause in our outer lives, or at least a shift in attention. By real action, as opposed to pointless movement, always brings meaning and value to our lives. Such action comes out of understanding. Otherwise, we remain brutally passive. I'm not sure if this is copied well into Chrome. Anyway, unless I'm just not understand that word, really passive. Could be truly passive. Machines being pushed from one event to the next with no understanding of what causes us to do the things we do. The true purpose of line 2 is not to abandon the active principle, but to awaken it. The imagery of Trump 11 combines the magician and the high priestess more completely than ever before. First of all, the digits of number 11 add up to 2. But the number also signifies a higher version of 1 as well as a lesser version of 21. The woman seated before 2 pillars with a veil between them suggests the high priestess, but her red robe and her posture, one arm up, one arm down, implies the magician. True action arises from self-knowledge. Wisdom arises out of action. In life, as in the picture, the magician and the high priestess are inextricably combined. Like a male and female snake twined around each other, a symbol of the Kundalini as well as the Caduceus of Hermes, or rather the double helix of the DNA. The color of the veil is purple, emblem of inner wisdom. Background, crown, hair, and scales are all yellow, signifying mental force. Wisdom does not arise spontaneously. We must think about our lives if we wish to understand them. But all of our thinking goes nowhere unless it develops out of a clear vision of the truth. On a microcosmic level of personal psychology, the Wheel of Fortune represented a vision of a person's life, the events, who you are, and what you've made of yourself. Justice indicates an understanding of that vision. The way to understanding lies in responsibility. Boom. As long as we believe that our past lives just happen, that we do not bring our own selves into existence through every thing we do, then the past remains a mystery, and the future an endlessly turning wheel, empty of meaning. But when we accept that every event in our lives has helped form our characters, and that in the future we will continue to create ourselves through actions, then the sword of wisdom cuts through the mystery. Further, by accepting responsibility for ourselves, we paradoxically free ourselves from the past. Like Buddha remembering all his lives, we can only get loose from the past by becoming conscious of it. Otherwise, we constantly repeat past behavior. This is why justice belongs in the center of our lives. The ego may only be a persona, a kind of mask, but that mask can control us as long as we will not admit to having forged it ourselves. The idea of responsibility for your own life does not imply any sort of invisible control over the outer world. It does not mean, for instance, that if an earthquake destroys your house, you have somehow willed this to happen. For whatever hidden reasons of your own. Understanding includes accepting the limitations of your physical existence. The universe is vast and strange and has no individual can control what happens in it. Nor does responsibility imply anything moral. It simply means that, like it or not, whatever you do, whatever your experience, contributes to the development of your personality. Life demands that you respond to every event. Not a moral requirement, just a fact of existence. And yet, all of our instincts, psychology, and religion, as well as the testimony of mystics, tells us that life contains something more, an inner core independent of that outer self, thrown from one experience to another. The second line shows the outer personality dying and the inner core, the angel of temperance, being allowed to emerge. Before such a release can happen, we must accept the justice of our lives. What we are, we have made ourselves. So this is taking moral responsibility for our own individual freedom, which then creates freedom on earth when the aggregate of people act morally. Our age sees this process of awareness as primarily psychological, best exemplified in the process of psychoanalysis. Other ages have externalized the process of transformation in the dramatic rituals of initiation. All initiations follow the same pattern. Having gathered his or her courage to become a neophyte, the candidate first receives instruction in the teaching of the cult or mystery. During this time, steps are taken through meditation, ritual, and drugs to open the channels of the unconscious and make the person receptive. These first stages are symbolized in strength and the hermit. Name of one of the places where I live. And then in great atmosphere of mystery and drama, the candidate is shown a vision of the cult's secret mysteries. They are kept secret partly to protect them from unbelievers, but even more to make them effective when revealed. So let me see what page 195. In the Grail cults, this vision was a dramatic procession of the Grail and its attendant symbols, carried by women weeping for a wounded king. We see an analogue of this vision in the Wheel of Fortune. And now comes a crucial moment. The candidate must make a response. If he or she simply stands there passively waiting for the next events, then the initiation cannot continue. In the Grail cults, the necessary response was most likely a question either, what is the meaning of these things, or more subtly, whom does the Grail serve? By asking this question, the candidate gives the cult a chance to answer. That is, I don't like that word cult, but I know it's used in a different context. That is, to continue the initiation through the ritual death and rebirth. More importantly, he or she shows a recognition of being part of the process responsible for its proper outcome. This is more difficult than it sounds. The ritual symbolizes the life, death, and rebirth of nature, as well as to the body dying to release the eternal soul. To speak at such an awesome event and remember that the initiate believed it in his or her gods and goddesses in a way impossible for most of us today required a courage at least as great as that needed to accept the truth revealed through psychological analysis and awakening. Yeah, this basically shadow work. Turning the gaze inwards and doing shadow work. In our time, the emphasis on individualism leads us to think only of personal death and rebirth. The great initiations, on the other hand, serve not only to transform the particular person, but also linked him or her to the wider mysteries of the universe. Following this lead, we can see another reason why the justice belongs in the center of the major arcana. We have spoken of the world as a great interplay of opposites, a constantly turning wheel of light and dark, life and death. We have also said that at the center of the wheel is the stationary point around which the opposites endlessly revolve. The balanced scales of justice again suggest that stationary point. When we find the center of our lives, everything comes into balance. When all the opposites, including past and future, come into balance, we're able to be free within ourselves. Many people wonder what the tarot or the I Ching or astrology tell us about free will. If the cards can predict what we'll do, does that mean free will does not really exist? The question arises from a misunderstanding of free will itself. We think of it as something simple and independent of the past. At any moment, we think we are free to do whatever we want, but our supposedly free choices are governed by our past actions. If we do not understand ourselves, how can we expect to make a free choice? Only by seeing and accepting the past can we free ourselves from it. A person may ask the cards about some situation. The cards very directly outline the consequences of some decision, say whether or not to go ahead with a love affair or start some new project. Let us say that the cards indicate disaster and that the person really can see the likelihood of what the cards predict. Now the person might say, well, this is likely, but my free will allows me to change the situation. So he or she goes ahead and the situation turns exactly as the cards predicted. The person has not really used free will at all. Rather, the idea of free will has served as an excuse for ignoring what he or she recognized as a valid projection. This is not a hypothetical situation. It happens again and again with tarot readings. It's not enough just to foresee a likely outcome for us to change or prevent the event. We must understand why it is coming, and we must work on the causes within ourselves for the things we do and the ways we react. Free will certainly exists. We just do not know how to use it. The most important thing we can learn from tarot readings is just how little we exercise our freedom. In tarot readings, one should always pay very careful attention to the card of justice. Its appearance indicates, first of all, that events have worked out in the way that they were meant to work out. That is, what is happening to you comes from situations and decisions in the past. What it's talking about is that, as a brief aside, is that, what's going on in the world is results of the collective individual decisions that we're all making. That's why awareness, moral decay. You have what you deserve. Secondly, it indicates a need and a possibility for seeing the truth of this outcome. The card signifies absolute honesty. At the same time, it shows a possibility that your actions in the future can be changed by a lesson learned in the present situation. We cannot become honest with ourselves without extending that honesty to our dealings with other people. In this sense, the card carries the obvious meanings of justice, honesty, fairness, correct actions, and of course, in legal and other matters, a just decision, though not necessarily the decision a person might prefer. Right. So I'll leave it there. you can it's getting into upside down meanings and things like that. I wanted to bring up the Justice card from the tarot. Tarot is very important. I know it might seem like a bit of an aside, but it's all speaking to turning our gaze inwards, taking moral action in ourselves, and then rather than again, this is rather than focusing our attention on, yes, when you do need to speak truth to injustice, but this is what's coming up for me when everyone's shouting, we need justice in the world, and turning to authority to change the situation. We need to change the situation inward by gazing inward and to align our actions morally and govern as slavery. So I'm Nick Haslam. This is Cosmic Surface, and that is the true response, the true natural law response to this current filth that's going on in the world, and to take an appropriate response based on natural law. Justice, true justice. And thank you to the presenters, Greg Reese, Mark Passio, and the writer of that book, Rachel Pollack. I'm Nick Haslam. Bye for now. This is Cosmic Service. Bye for now.